Hey guys, my name's Ben, and today I'll be giving a tour of Sundance with BruntForce, the map creator.
Hey, thank
Hi.
you for doing this. I
Sure.
I started making this map a long time ago, like back in the spring, and finally finishing it up and releasing it. And because there's some weird stuff in it, some stuff that is kind of new if you're only used to the old-fashioned traditional race rule maps, I thought it would be a good idea to do this tutorial. Not really a tutorial, a tour. And Ben was kind enough to help me out with that. So thank you, Ben.
Uh-huh.
So I guess the first main weird thing you can see if you fly up and get a bird's eye view of the map, the lanes are not just straight rectangles. They sort of wind from side to side. I guess I've already said that. Not quite right. The lanes don't wind. This is the important part. The landscape does, but the lanes do not wind. If you look back at the spawn platform, you can see the color, the orange and the red there. That is the width of the lane all the way along it. It's a rectangle starting with the spawn platform going all the way to the end of the map, and it doesn't change even though the landscape gets narrower and fatter and goes side to side. So what that means is you can always build in your 16 block wide rectangle, even when it looks like it's just staring over void. So there's a few blocks to the side here when you can actually use for whatever tricky tactics that you have in mind.
Yeah. It makes moving up and down through the map easier sometimes. Like you can just bypass this bedrock right here by going into the lane here, or the side of the lane. But obviously, if you're doing it in the front of the lane, you're exposed to PvP and you need blocks. So there's trade-offs. But it's definitely like a really interesting feature about this map. That's completely new. It's something that is very interesting from a strategical perspective.
It leads to good gameplay.
Uh-huh.
There's also, if you look at the top, another way to move along the lane. There's some cloud parkour. I guess this isn't super new, but there's some goodies in the cloud, and it might be a fast way or a way to avoid mobs. Another way of getting along the lane quickly. Some risk, obviously, but the parkour is pretty easy, so I don't think it'll be a struggle for teams to be able to use that feature.
Mm-hmm.
If we go down here, I'm not sure where you went off to.
No, I'm right here.
Oh, yeah. You're looking at these gigantic resources that I made. It's all got pretty normal stuff, like iron, TNT supplies, potions. There's a chest for enchanting. There's even a chest with some block stuff to build with. It's just really spread out, and there are some spawners. So I really prefer maps that are kind of a challenge all the way along it, where you have to kind of fight your way through something at every step of the way. Nothing's really given out for free. And I've tried to do that with my map here.
Yep.
There's more diving down there. Just a really big spread out resource area.
Uh-huh.
So you're not really in danger of everything getting cannoned from one location. That'd be a pretty crazy cannon if you pull that off.
And resources is definitely something you're going to want in this map, so it's definitely a really important area.
All right, under this big tree here is the entrance to First Wolf, the PvE wolf called Claustrophobia. It is small and dark and, well, not small, but close quarters, cramped. It's hopefully a hard wall. I wanted to make a hard PvE wall. And originally, from the first few tests, it turned out that it was too hard, so I made it significantly easier, but it's still, I hope, a worthy challenge, something that you have to strategize for and gear up for and work your way through.
Yeah. It's a pretty, I guess it's not that unique of a wolf, but it's definitely got some this last vertical section can be difficult. The beginning part where you drop down shouldn't be too bad, but it can definitely catch a lot of players off guard. And there's some interesting strategies you can definitely use to get down here too. This open room is kind of interesting because most of it is made out of bedrock, which means there can't be any natural spawns. And so the difficulty in this wall is there's not too much randomness in it. There's just going to be the spawns from the spawners in this room. That's first.
Up first wall. I don't see where you went off here. You're probably just escaping still. Yep.
Yeah, I'm at
Okay.
the pad right now.
Hello.
Hello.
Here we're getting towards second wall, and this obsidian bridge is probably the first really strange feature of the map, or really new feature. So this is a shared lane, but it's not a large dungeon that teams can camp like most other shared wall lanes in Race for Wool. This is just obviously a very small, narrow depression, difficult to hold by having someone stand on top of it. But something very important in it, these pressure plates change the day and night cycle. And that's really important, not just for setting your bed and for controlling mob spawns, but also for controlling second wall. So if you look over at that disc over there, you'll see there's 4 quadrants in the disc. The purple ones are accessible at night, and the orange ones are accessible during the day. So if you look at the entrance to the wall, we're flying around. You can see that currently it's stained glass. And if you fly out and look at the disc a little bit, I'll change it in a moment. It'll take a while to reset.
Yep.
You can see that it's impossible to get from, or at least you'd have to dig through this obsidian anyways to get from the night quadrant into the next day quadrant.
Yeah.
But when you get to the very bottom, you can pass through this stained glass to get into the night quadrant because the purples are accessible at night. And then you work your way around to the wool box up there. But at daytime, I'll let you look at the wool. When I switch it to daytime by stepping on this pressure plate over here, then that all changes. The bedrock gets switched for stained glass, and the stained glass gets switched for bedrock. So now it's impossible to progress from this orange quadrant to this purple one. But you don't have to dig obsidian anymore. You can just go through the stained glass instead to get into the orange quadrants.
Yeah, it's definitely a pretty interesting wool as well. I'd say the wool itself isn't, too drastically difficult. It's probably not as bad as it looks, but it is one wide. But if you use doors, other tactics, it's usually not too horrible, but the pad is definitely something you're going to want to worry about when you're running this wool, because not only is it absolutely required to get through the wool, but it could definitely help a lot, and you're going to want control of it for sure when you're running the wool, and so that can be a hotly contested location on the map.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right. And then heading past the fortress there, we've got the lane dwindling to a point. So this really shows very clearly the difference between the landscape and the lane, because the lane, again, is still 16 blocks wide. And you can see that if you look towards the end of the lane. I'm not sure if it's loaded in, but there's stained glass at the end. And you can see the purple stained glass obviously marks out how wide the purple lane is. So you can see exactly how far you can build the one side or the other before auto ref kills you. So you don't have to memorize anything like that. You've got a clear representation. Right. Before we get to the wool, maybe it's worth talking about these things floating up in the air here. So you might have seen back towards first wool another blue pad, and there's a blue pair of teleporters on each team's lane, and there's also a red pair. The red one is kind of a lower down one, and the blue one kind of up in the air.
Yeah, and so if you go activate the blue one, I'll show the teleporting. And okay, so right now it won't teleport because he hasn't activated it, but once he does activate it...
Right, so at the start of the game, I'll do it in a second. At the start of the game, all your teleporters are inactivated, but if you make it to the further one, then and you step on it, then after you use it for the first time, then the pair is activated. Yeah. So now you can flip from first wall to third wall instantly on the blue teleporter pad. Mm-hmm. There you go. See how that works?
And then there's a second one down here, and that links up to a pad just past the entrance to second wall, right here. Oops, right here. So here's the pad for that.
There's also some resources down near the red teleporter pad.
And so I think this is definitely the most interesting thing, or this is probably my favorite part about the map, because this is the pads are like, it's kind of like an instant wormhole in the map. It's like, it's not linear like most race roll maps. Like you can just teleport instantly from one place to another, and so it opens up a lot of options for PvP and just other strategies for running the wool. And it's definitely, I'm really looking forward to seeing how teams will use these pads. They're definitely a really important asset on the map to activate and use.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what teams come up with as well. Not only PvP, but also just controlling third wall,
Mm-hmm.
or this whole area here by the lane actually be very useful for getting around quick. All right, but the last wool has kind of two parts to it. It's a void lane wool.
Yeah, so
Very
major
simple.
PvP wool. Simple, but definitely like hard. I'd say this is, rivaled in difficulty by second wool. They're both very challenging PvP wools that have a lot of potential to be locked down for sure.
But yeah, lots of interesting things you can do. Not just Icaruses, but lots of interesting strategies for
Uh huh.
getting across large gaps. All right, so inside this bedrock box, there's a wool chest, but it is currently sealed off because, yeah. So this top one contains the wool chest, but it's currently sealed in bedrock. But if I go down here, so say I'm on Ben's team, and I come down and I step on a pressure plate down on the bottom island that you were just looking at, now the wool chest will be open and you can get your wool.
Yep. And so you just have to hit this bottom pressure plate once to open up that wool box. You don't have to stand on it continually or anything. Just get to it once, hit it. The wool chest opens up at the top.
All right, well, those are all the really weird or new concepts that I've included in my map. Hopefully they're not too confusing. I really hope that they lead to some interesting gameplay, something that we haven't seen before. I think would be just terrific, and I'd have accomplished my mission, and it should be fun. So if those things happen, I'm happy.
Uh huh. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that just about does it. Yep. So see you guys later.